The Shark Deck.
I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. I'm going to flip the order here. I've got some pretty strong late night jokes, but top of mind, I seriously just got out of the car and came straight down to the studio. I was listening to Theo Von's podcast. It's called This Past Weekend. His guest, Louis C.K. And I want to focus in on the second hour. Just Louis talking about comedy has so impressed me just listening to him. The thing that really got me decide to come down here, and I'm like, I got to record this right away before I forget what he said. He compared comedians to pitchers in baseball. He said, you know, there's some guys, they can come out and they just throw heat. They're like closers. And I was like, yeah, like a Bill Burr just comes out and is like, has that high energy. It's just bam, 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 bam. And then he said there are other guys that can change speeds and throw you off balance, throw heat, but then come in with something that makes you think a little differently. And I was thinking, yeah, Dave Chappelle is like a really good starting pitcher. Bill Burr is like a really good closer. Two different types of comedians, two different types of pitchers. But I was like, wow, really insightful by Louis. Then he was talking about in his own act of how he likes to take the audience for a ride and make them laugh about things that they feel unsure about laughing. But as he's driving the bus, he's comfortable because he knows where he's going and he knows where he can get just a good laugh line and make everybody feel better. But he likes making audiences feel uncomfortable along the way. It's just a really fascinating discussion of comedy. Now, originally, I was going to tell you that I was disappointed in the episode because my initial notes before I got back in the car and finished the podcast, the first 58 minutes or so, they're just talking about sex. And if you listen to this podcast, you're probably familiar with some aspects of Louis C.K.'s personal history. And I was like, wow, really interesting that you have Louis C.K. on and this whole conversation is about sex for a full hour. That's weird. Now, it wasn't like goofing about boobs. They weren't clowning around. They were very serious. It's an interesting interview. But at one point, I was like, wow, enough already. Can we talk about comedy? But then the second hour, when Louis starts deep diving on comedy again, that pitching thing, I'm like, wow, that's really, really good. I'm going to add that into my arsenal of explainers when I discuss comedy with other people. So check that out. It's called This Past Weekend. Theo Von is the host. Louis C.K. is the guest. There's also an episode with Tony Hinchcliffe. I've been on a Tony kick. He's the host of Kill Tony. And that's another episode where they talk a lot about comedy. So if you're deep into comedy, you might want to check those two out. All right, late night. Normally I do late night at the top, but let's do it here. The subject, they found some more classified documents at Mike Pence's home last week. Jimmy Kimmel joked the documents were found in a box with some of his other secret items, including a 4-pack of Zima and Polaroids of Mother dressed in her swimming costume. Fallon, the craziest part about the documents, they were stuffed between a dozen Wu-Tang albums. Fallon, again, these are crazy times. Right now, Walgreens has deodorant behind a locked case, while classified documents are laying around like J. Crew catalogs all over the house. Seth Meyers, so they're just in every home? That's the only thing that makes sense anymore. When you buy a new house and you move in, there's just classified documents sitting on the counter next to that half roll of paper towels and box of baking soda. Gordon, is everyone just handed a box when leaving the White House? They're like, thanks for coming. Here's some state secrets. Seth, when Mike Pence heard about this, he stayed white as a ghost. Seth again. This is starting to feel like the beginning of the pandemic. You hear about one case, then another, and before you know it, we're all going to be locked in our apartments, wiping down our mail, terrified that some classified documents are going to get in. Seth, again, the Justice Department has launched an investigation into the classified documents found in Pence's home, and more specifically, why was Joe Biden keeping them there? James Corden for the win. I'm starting to wonder if I have classified documents in my house. Switching topics, Stephen Colbert, Pentagon officials, they'd been reluctant to send tanks to Ukraine, but they changed their minds after Germany agreed to send their tanks to Ukraine, making this the first time anyone in Europe has said, good news, the German tanks are rolling in. Nate Bargatze's special is out today on Amazon Prime Video. It's called Hello World. Where does this come from? He told Jimmy Fallon he borrowed it from Tiger Woods. The day before Tiger Woods made his pro debut at the 1996 Greater Milwaukee Open, Tiger Woods faced the media with a big smile and said, I guess, hello, world. Nate Bargatze's an avid golf fan and said, I wanted a nice greeting. It's also a nod to Tiger Woods' Nate Bargatze on Amazon today, which means there's a good chance later in the week I'll be telling you it's the #1 special of the year, because the only other special I watched was Andrew Santino. Put a chip down on your bingo card. Yes, I mentioned Andrew again. But I didn't like that special. Kevin Hart, he is not afraid to take on a job. He's got yet another one. This is a comedy heist movie called Lift. It'll be on Netflix in August. In Lift, Kevin Hart plays a master thief who is wooed by his ex-girlfriend and the FBI to pull off an impossible heist with his international crew on a 777 aircraft flying from London to Zurich. Shortle caught up with Phil Wang. Phil is a really good comic. If you're not familiar with him, where's his special? Let me tell you, because you should watch it. Phil Wang, Philly Wang Wang. You'll find that on Netflix. Very good special. He has revealed that his worst ever panel show appearance was on What I Lied to You because he ate too much beforehand. He said, it's a good show. It's very popular. So it's a shame to do badly on it. And basically, I didn't say a word because beforehand, I'd had the biggest fried rice of my life. He blames the backstage catering. He said, when you get to the studio, someone will come out very kindly and say, what do you want to eat? I had a big fried rice. I got so excited because this was early on. I was like, wow, can I have anything? So I had a fried rice with miso soup. I loaded up and they were like, all right, Phil, we're starting now. And I'm like, ugh, all the blood in my brain had gone down to my stomach. I was dehydrated from the salt of the soy. So my mouth was just, ugh, and I couldn't think because my brain was dehydrated. So I just sat there struggling, drinking water for like 2 hours. I was on with Lee Mack. He's hard enough to keep up with when you're not dehydrated. He was then on another panel show that finally convinced his parents that comedy was a viable career. Phil said, how have I got news for you? Was when my mother finally stopped suggesting I get an MBA. Before that, she was like, oh, how's comedy going? That's wonderful, dear. Have you thought about it getting an MBA? Thought about getting a business, just in case? Phil talked some more about food and said, food in Malaysia is what booze is here in the UK. Malaysians eat the way Brits go to the pub. It's a social thing. So like coffee shops, hawker centers, they're open in Malaysia. Some of them open all night. They're open late. That's where you go to socialize and the way that you go for a pint here. So that's the amount of energy and passion that goes into food in Malaysia. Every meal is like hot and tasty and spicy and delicious, whereas in the UK, I found that meals could be a little more functional. They're about getting you through the afternoon. He also revealed he wrote a joke for Amy Schumer used on the Oscars. Amy first got in touch with Phil after his half-hour comedy set aired on Netflix, and he says they've been friends ever since. Then she found out she was going to host the Oscars, and she asked around a bunch of comedian friends if they had any jokes to offer. Phil wrote a few, and she used one about the Will Smith movie King Richard about the father of the Williams sisters. The joke was, isn't it amazing? After years of Hollywood ignoring women's stories, this year we finally got a movie about the incredible Williams sisters' dad. She did that joke, and it cuts to Will Smith, and he's laughing. You have some surreal moments in this career, but watching Will Smith laugh at the Oscars to my joke that was weird. Well, Phil, I wonder if you watched the second hour because it got a lot weirder. San Francisco Sketchfest took Monday night off, and tonight's a little quiet. It's a Tuesday, but pretty good one at 7:30. The tribute to Cheech and Chong, a 50th anniversary celebration. Who will be there? Cheech and Chong. I got an email from the Yard Bro who sent me an article from BuzzFeed titled, The Mindy Kaling Backlash Has Lost All Nuance. Yard Bro, thanks for sending this in. BuzzFeed writes, Velma has opened up a discourse about Mindy Kaling's long career of writing and performing a specific kind of Indian woman. Dorky, self-absorbed, insecure, obsessed with attaining the romantic validation of caustic white guys, and eager to fling herself, her family, her culture, and other cultures under the bus to get it. From Mindy of the Mindy Project, to Devi of Never Have I Ever, to Bella of The Sex Lives of College Girls, to Velma, Kaling's Indian protagonists tend to follow a similar pattern. They all fall for nerdy white dudes who started out as their rivals. BuzzFeed writes, an initial tongue-in-cheek defense of Kaling's obsession with a specific type of white man offered this explanation. I'm gathering this is from the interwebs. There was a tweet that said, you have to remember, Mindy spent formative sexual years at Dartmouth over 20 years ago. That's all there was. New England changes people. That tweet was viewed close to 9 million times. As the critiques of Kaling's characters escalate, so too does the demand for Mindy Kaling's accountability. BuzzFeed continues, more damning than her character's obsession with white guys is their casually racist self-hatred. It's like the writers are anticipating viewers' inherent disgust with young Indian women and trying to beat them to the punchline. It's also boring to see the same racist stereotypes and beauty standards trotted out again and again. Plus, it's baffling to see Kaling, one of the most successful Indian women in Hollywood, undermine her own creation. Having gotten far enough in her career to create her own TV show centering young Indian girls, why mock them? Skipping ahead, and this is a very long, thorough article you'll find on BuzzFeed, they write, there's the fact that her brother wrote a book called Almost Black, the true story of how I got into medical school by pretending to be black, which is self-evidently exploitative and racist. There's the fact that she liked one of J.K. Rowling's tweets, in which the famously anti-trans author boasted about her recent royalty checks in response to someone asking how it felt to lose a huge chunk of her audience. BuzzFeed writes, when a young brown girl appears on screen in one of Kaling's shows, it's easy enough to guess where her story is going. She'll probably be a loudmouth nerd with strict parents and insecurities about her body hair, fixated on a white dude who's little more than rude to her. She will probably not question the rigid social hierarchy she's inherited. In fact, she's probably going to enact it cruelly on herself and others. Viewers are bored with the artistic laziness of these plot lines, both in their repetitiveness and their reliance on outdated stereotypes. It's certainly a sign that Kaling's comedy has gotten stale and that her politics have fallen behind the times. Time out. Velma has set people off. People are not reacting to this. It's got like a 6% on Rotten Tomatoes. Like, as I mentioned, and this was the reason the Yardbro sent me the article, I premised in an episode last week or the week before, has Mindy Kaling done damage to her career? This BuzzFeed article makes me still wonder, has Mindy Kaling done damage to her career? BuzzFeed writes, quote unquote, Mindy Kaling is a perfectly packaged trending topic that people can engage with. She's a woman in comedy who has historically been criticized for her weight, her voice, and her darker skin. We found new ways to target her, but she's still a public figure we love to hate. She's so much like her characters that we believe their faults are her faults. She's just portraying herself, stylized as a self-hating freak over and over again, and it's boring. As much as I read there, I skimmed a lot of it. BuzzFeed's The Mindy Kaling Backlash Has Lost All Nuance. Check that one out. And from dogtime.com, your home for comedy news, Doug the Pug. He's developing an animated comedy series. I saw this headline. I was like, all right, what is this? Doug the Pug apparently has 19 million followers on social media and over 1 billion, I said billion with a B, 1 billion views on YouTube. Doug the Pug and his billion views are working on an animated show. The animated comedy series will be based on Doug the Pug's life. I love this paragraph. The four-legged influencer is also an actor, best-selling author, and People's Choice Award winner. In other words, this dog has accomplished more than you have and probably ever will in his lifetime. Why not? And that's your comedy news for today. Follow the show for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your shows. See you tomorrow. Did you hear about the border collie who recycles trash when he's out on his walks? Or how about the bear that stole someone's Chick-fil-A, but good news, left the salad behind? Hi, I'm Johnny Mac, host of 5 Good News Stories. Don't worry, I have stories about humans too, like there's a woman who makes a living because she looks like Jim Carrey. It's my podcast. It's 5 Good News Stories. 5 Good News Stories. The number 5 Good News Stories. Twice a week. 5 Good News Stories. Oh, and Shamrock Shakes are back too. Good news. 5 Good News Stories, wherever you get your shows.